In January, we did my annual 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance program where we looked at one thing you could do each day. Well, we're back with the Compliance Tip of the Day. This is the podcast where we bring you daily insights and practical advice on navigating the ever-evolving landscape of compliance requirements. Whether you're a seasoned compliance professional or just starting your journey, my aim in this podcast is to provide you with a bite-sized, actionable tip to help you stay on top of your compliance game. In the chaotic world of 2025 and beyond, compliance will become even more important, and you staying on top of your game will help your company move forward. Today we go back to the basics a little bit and talk about implementing internal controls for your organization. How should you implement internal controls in a multinational organization? The first step is to convert your company's compliance risk into internal control objectives. The internal control objectives are then given to each business unit with the instructions to develop controls which meet those objectives. The process should allow more than a fine-tuning approach within the existing system than the development of specific controls by corporate, which all business units must adopt and will give the business unit a sense of buy-in and participation in the process. One example of how the process might work in the situation where compliance risk is that for a third-party representative may be paid for an invoiced amount before the third-party representative has gone through your company's full third-party approval process. Here, your control objective is that internal controls should be in place to ensure that no vendors are added to the vendor master file until such time as the vendor has been approved. If your company has a sophisticated ERP system such as SAP or Oracle, where checks are generated using the vendor master file and signed by the customer, this control objective may be met by adding a field to the vendor master file which inserts the date the vendor is approved, and by programming such as a requirement that the vendor information cannot be inserted into the checked unless the designated fields are populated. There should also be manual controls to ensure that data is not entered inappropriately. These internal controls could translate into a form for changes to the vendor master, which is initiated by the person in charge of the vendor due diligence, but requires a second set of eyes, requiring sign-off from a second person, such as the controller. Through this mechanism, you have created a primary control through your third-party approval process and validated that process if a change or exception is taken. What if your location or business unit involved does not have a sophisticated ERP system? In that situation, the control objective could be satisfied by using a similar form for all changes to the vendor master file, combined with a requirement that a report for all changes be printed and submitted to the check signers along with the applicable approved vendor change request. Obviously, SOX certification is a critical component of any U.S. public corporation, and a primary reason for SOX certification of financial controls is design criteria. Although SOX has a materiality threshold, there is no materiality threshold for the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Good compliance internal controls are not some standalone protective measures. They can help a company make it run more efficiently, as the internal controls that prevent violations are the same ones that prevent fraud in the workplace. The presence of good internal controls saves a company money, and it is a best practice. So what are today's 3 key takeaways? Number 1, convert your compliance risks into internal control objectives. This gives you the ability to move to a risk ranking system. 2, as with many components of a best practices compliance program, tone at the top is important, even in the arena of internal controls. 3, if you receive pushback from the business folks, always remember that good internal controls make for a better, more efficient, and more profitable business. And if you share that information with the business unit and seek their input on fine-tuning your controls, I think you will find that getting their buy-in goes a long way towards acceptance. One of of the things that I'm happy to do for you, the compliance profession, is if you have a question or a series of questions you would like some compliance tips on, I'm happy to take any requests that you might want, certainly anonymize them, and give you a quick tip. Either one quick tip or maybe a week's worth of quick tips. So if you have any tips you want about your compliance program, you can shoot me an email at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. This podcast was created and produced with the assistance of AI.